All right, what's up, everybody? How y'all doing? Let's talk a little bit about MMT. Let's do a little MMT lesson. I haven't done an MMT lesson in a while, and what prompted me to want to talk about this is I got an email a little while ago from a guy. He writes a newsletter. I didn't sign up, but I get his emails for some reason, and he's like, "There's the big thing you got to know. The big thing you got to know that's coming up is there might be some changes to the Fed's balance sheet." And when I saw a balance sheet, I was interested to read his what he had to say because I cover the H.4.1. That's the weekly Fed balance sheet that they release, which gives all the breakdown of all its assets, all its liabilities, and I put that in MMT Trader Report. I put the main a lot of the main components on there. For example, holdings of treasuries by the Fed, holdings of mortgage-backed securities, reserve balances at Federal Reserve banks, reverse repos. I've been putting that in there recently now with since it's raising rates. Um, Central bank liquidity swaps. Those are the forex swaps. I put foreign currency holdings of the Fed because that's kind of a tip off to what's happening on the export. With exports, nobody knows that. Only I know that, and my subscribers. But so I'm very, very familiar with the Fed's balance sheet. But I want to see what this guy had to say. And basically, what it was like a big warning, like what happened last week, and I wasn't even aware of this, but apparently the Fed or somebody at the Fed made some statements that they might be reducing the size of their balance sheet, earlier than expected. Oh, so this guy was freaking out because, people have this kind of wrong understanding of the Fed's when they expand their balance sheet through asset purchases. And then, the whole thing basically is a gigantic asset swap. And I'll get into it in a second. But this guy laid out 3 points. He said, if the Fed starts, they have the balance sheet is over 4 trillion. They got 2.4 trillion in treasuries. They got 1.7, almost 1.8 trillion in mortgage-backed securities. So if they start selling that stuff, and this has been a prediction since going back to December 2015 when they started to raise rates. We had all these geniuses at the Wall Street firms say, oh, there's going to be an avalanche of selling. Meanwhile, the amount of treasuries the Fed owns now is higher now than it was back in December 2015. So there was no avalanche, okay? But what the thing is, and this guy really is not aware of it because he was making a big deal about the Fed selling off its holdings. He said the psychological impact, and that's true. It's like when the Fed starts buying assets, everybody freaks out and they start to buy stocks because they believe that is somehow good for stocks. When in essence, when the Fed buys assets, it's stripping out income from the economy, right? When it bought 2.4 trillion of treasuries, it took away that income, which we know what it is because the Fed gives $100 billion a year to the Treasury, U.S. Treasury. That was $100 billion that went into the economy before the Fed bought those securities and took the income for itself. And basically, all these people who were talking about the Fed, when they started quantitative easing back whenever it was, 2010, 2011, and you had all these idiots yelling, it was going to be hyperinflation and the dollar was going to collapse. Not me, of course. I was arguing the contrary. And of course, that never happened, all that crazy stuff that they were talking about. But they take income out of the economy, and that's how come, and you could see it very clearly. You see personal interest income, a component of personal income from the National Income and Products accounts. Whenever they release the GDP report, you could look that up. You see the personal interest income has gone way down ever since the Fed was doing QE. So now, and I've always argued that, the only way to look at that is a giant asset swap. That's it. It's removing the treasuries and replacing it with reserve balances. So it's stripping out a high-yielding instrument of high quality. It's returning also an instrument of high quality, reserve balances, but which yield nothing, or now they yield 1%. Big deal. So in essence, but everybody gets all crazy and they buy stocks, and they bought stocks basically on an economy that was really kind of slowed down as a result of QE because you stripped out all that income. Now the worry is the opposite. All these geniuses who got it wrong the last time, they're going to get it wrong again, but they're going to sell them when they hear the Fed say, "Okay, everybody, now we're going to start reducing our balance sheet." They're going to start selling stocks reflexively because that's what they believe, which is fantastic for us because it'll set up a wonderful, amazing, like 10-year cycle buying opportunity. And the reason is it's once again an asset swap, but this time what they're doing is they're taking back the reserve balances, which only yield 1%, and they're giving back the treasuries of the higher yield. So they're re-injecting those high quality, high yielding assets back into the economy. They're taking away the lowly reserve balances, which, by the way, we saw recently with the sudden huge increase in reserves when the Treasury spent out all its cash recently. That constrains a bank, we think. I'm having a whole big discussion about this with some people now. We're trying to look into it, but we think it affects the leverage ratio of banks, and that was what was behind the slowdown in credit growth. All right, so you take away the reserves, you re-inject the high quality, higher yielding assets like treasuries. That's fantastic for the economy. It's fantastic for the economy, but all these idiots, they're going to be selling, and they're going to sell a lot, believe me, because every single one of them, from the very top levels of Wall Street all the way down to the peons on the street, the regular salesmen, they're going to be telling their clients or doing it for themselves, they're going to be selling stocks. And we're going to just be sitting there with a bushel basket, because at some point the Fed, when they do reduce the balance sheet and you re-inject the economy with these high quality assets that yield much higher than reserve balances, that's fantastic. That's like filling up the swimming pool, right? That's what you want. But they don't know. So that's another reason why I take money from these guys. So easy, it's so easy, it's so easy, it's so easy. They don't understand. And the interesting thing is they don't want to understand. I had guys that say, "Hey, Mike, I can't read your report. I don't have I don't have the brain power." You don't want to understand? You don't want to develop the brain power? Come on, folks, please. Please. If you're going to quit. Just don't denigrate yourself in the process. All right? So that's what's going to happen. I can't wait. I hope they announce it at the next meeting and everyone starts selling. Oh, man, it's going to be awesome. See you later. Bye-bye.